what led you? What is some of the steps that kind of drew you into being this resiliency expert, and how you also became that limit pusher?
Well, life. I always say that I teach clients from my experience, not necessarily from anything I've read in a book, because we have a lot of resilience experts who maybe haven't lived it and are teaching tools that they just have read about and know that they work. I know that they work because I've lived them. I have been tested so many times. My resilience, not only as a business owner with trying to build multiple businesses, but in my personal life, two abusive marriages. I've been single parenting for 12 years. Two of my three kids have had very serious health issues. I've had the toxic family issues, all the things that tested my resilience. And I don't tell those stories for anyone to feel bad for me, because my life is incredible. I have this amazing life. And that's what I want for everyone, is to know that you can go through some really, really hard things and still have an amazing life. So that's why I do the work that I do. And I really just got pulled to do it. It was listening to the intuition, the voices in my head to say, you know what, people need your help. You have important stories to tell and you need to start telling them. And that's how I got to this job. And the limit pushing, that started when my son was born in 2000. I was told when he was 7.5 weeks old that he would probably never be able to walk or talk because he was born with a permanent brain injury.
Mm.
And I got really upset, of course, like every parent would. I did some research on what he has is called periventricular leukomalacia, which is a scientific term to mean softening of the white matter near the ventricles. But he has all kinds of issues with his brain structure and still does. But he is as normal as the rest of us because I pushed him so hard. He pushed himself so hard. And I pushed the limits of every doctor and professional that I spoke with. I asked for referrals. I didn't take no for an answer. I said, that's not going to be my kid. And that's where I started the limit pushing. And it's just gotten easier. The more you do it, that's resilience in a nutshell right there, is building the muscle. And the more times you do it, the easier it gets. And he started my limit pushing, and I'm still pushing limits.
When I'm listening to you, the things that come to mind is there's so many people out there that have these curveballs of life that show up. And we know that there's the fight, flight, or freeze response. And many go into that place of freeze because they have this belief that maybe they're not deserving, or they're kind of in this panic, like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And they feel like they're not within their control and just blindly wanting to take that magic bullet, right? That magic silver, the magic pill that's going to solve everything. That, when people think about diets, that's one of the things. But what I realize when it comes to resilience, and maybe you can share one of your stories, because we do talk about life, leadership, and business. So even if you can tap on something in each one of those, that would be fabulous. Is that the key phrase that you said, that's not going to be my son. We all can say, that's not going to be my life. And
Mhm.
move from that paralysis. Because what I've learned along my own personal journey is that when we move past paralysis, when we are asking and seeking help, like you said, and, asking for a second opinion or asking for an opportunity, these are all limit pushings for ourselves, but it also moves us in the direction of healing, getting healthier, and creating that life that we want. And when we're in that paralysis, that freeze mode, because our amygdala was hijacked and we didn't move into the fight, we didn't move into, fight, flight, or like freeze, that freeze part really holds us back from doing anything. And you might even, when I think about people in my life, or maybe even your life, Karen, you probably sit there and think, okay, I can see you freezing. You're not ready to get help. And how do you, because I know you're a success coach as well, how do you help people move from being in that freeze to actually starting to seek the help so that they can be resilient?
I try to give them a tool to avoid the freeze. And the tool is quite simple and something we don't consciously think about, and it is to breathe.
Mm.
So, what I've learned through so many hard things is when you get the bad news, whatever it is, when the person says something to you that is meant to upset you, is to stop and breathe. Consciously take 3 or 5 super deep breaths and only think about breathing. And when you're done those, and it takes seconds, when you have done that seconds of breathing, your brain is going to react in a healthier way because your brain needs oxygen to work properly. And we all do it. As soon as we get the hard thing, we freeze, we stop breathing, we tense up. So by intentionally breathing, which sounds so simple, it really does change how we react. And the other thing I talk to clients and everyone that I talk to, basically friends, everybody, is to remind them that we have everything inside of us that we need to get through every situation that could ever be presented to us. We do. We don't always believe it because we've listened for years to other people's thoughts, other people's opinions of us. When we're kids, we're told you can't do that. You're not big enough. You're not strong enough. You're not whatever enough. And that goes into our adulthood. And so it's about being conscious because 95% of what we do every day comes from our subconscious mind. So it's about reprogramming that subconscious to believe.
Yeah. It is so interesting because, when people are saying that you're not good enough or you shouldn't really try that, they're wanting to protect you. But what I've come to also realize is that they wouldn't do those things for themselves.
Right. It's about them. It's not about you.
Yeah.
They are putting their limits on you when they are saying you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes I actually just posted on LinkedIn about this situation. Um, I was at an event a few weeks ago. There was an older woman there. I mean, she was in her 80s older. And I had a younger woman who knew her quite well and who also knows me come up to me and say, you need to keep your distance from her. And I said, pardon me. And she said, she finds you too much. And I wasn't doing anything to be too much. I was just there talking to people, and I wasn't the center of attention at all. And we talked about it later, and she said, I'm sorry, I just wanted to protect you from her because I know what she's like. And she's very jealous of strong, independent women.
Wow.
And I thought, and she's in her 80s. And I thought, wow, to go through life and still never believe that you have a light to shine and that somebody's outshining you is really sad to me.
Right. Yeah.
That and so I encourage people, the gratitude, the building each other up, the looking at other people's successes as inspiration instead of from jealousy. Those are the things that get you where you need to go, is to celebrate success, not think it's a bad thing. And it goes for life and business because we see it in every aspect. But to just remember that these people are succeeding because they believe, and you can too. And there's enough abundance for everybody. There's no limit to the abundance in our world. So it's really about believing and programming ourselves to believe and programming ourselves to see the good. So I have a friend who often sees the bad in situations, and I test her. I said, okay, what good happened today? And just changing that mindset is so powerful.
I want to dive into that scenario a little bit more. When I think about that 80-year-old self, we sometimes would say, what would your 80-year-old self say to your younger self now? I'd be curious as to what that individual would share with her younger self. Maybe based on what you've shared, it would be something like, don't be too big, don't share
Yeah.
too much, right? Versus imagine if she was her most expansive self. And when I say expansive, of letting that light from her shine, because if we think about and imagine that if everybody had the opportunity to allow themselves to be themselves and shine, I can imagine what our world would be like.
Yeah. It would be so much brighter for starters. And just, I think everyone would have more success because we would all be lifting each other up. And
Mhm.
I actually kind of use what you said, but in reverse. When I do keynotes, is I talk about, what would your 5-year-old self think of you today? Like she, he, they would be so proud. Because when you're 5 and you're dreaming of all the things that you could be, and now I guarantee you, you've accomplished some of them, if not all of them. So I always look at it as, what would I say to my 5-year-old self? And if when I look in the mirror, and if I was talking to a little 5-year-old girl, would I say that to her? And that's one of the most powerful things that I find is, I think about little 5-year-old me and think, would I say that to her when I look in the mirror and go, oh my God, you look horrible.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't say that to my 5-year-old self. And it really helps to change those words in your head.
I
Because
don't, yeah, go
uh,
ahead, Karen.
I was just going to say, the voice that you hear the most is your own voice in your head. So you have to make sure it is saying positive things.
And that's very important because I think about, I'm just going to grab something here. And maybe you use this as a tool too, but I learned this past year from Darius Bashar. He's out of Toronto, to keep a little, I don't know if you can see this,
Yes.
keep a picture of your younger self by your desk. And
Mm-hmm.
whenever you catch yourself in that kind of mood that you're going to be spiraling into a negative mood, to look over at that picture and remind yourself that's who you're talking to.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. So when you think about one of your life situations, and breathing, I know it interrupts the cycle. That as soon as you're thinking, that breath will give you that force of oxygenation, and it's kind of like a reset. But when life throws you this curveball, let's say an illness, something that you're not expecting at work, maybe if someone got fired, how would they look at a situation? Like they take their deep breath and they're like, now what? What would be the
Mhm.
top 3 things that you would tell them from taking that deep breath?
First thing, you have permission to feel all the feelings. That's one of the things that I think, have been programmed to do our whole lives is, to be the tough guy and to hold it all in. But that's not healthy. So it's okay to say, okay, I'm scared right now, or I'm really worried right now. I find it powerful to write it down and journal about it. I also find it powerful to talk about it. I always say I'm a verbal processor. So look at what helped you the most to get those feelings out, because resilience isn't about avoiding the feelings. It's about walking through the feelings.
Mm.
And I always say, you can have a bad minute, you can have a bad hour, you can have a bad like afternoon, but I try to never let something ruin my entire day. I try to find the good in every single day, because no matter what bad things are happening, there's still something good. So those are some of the things to help. And it's important to just focus and find the baby steps that are going to get you through this tough situation. So the how isn't always that easy to figure out, but you have to think, okay, what can I do in this moment to make this moment a little easier?
Yeah.
And then you just have to worry about the next minute and the next minute. But I say it's okay to not be okay. You just can't live there.
Mm.
And so you have to admit that this is hard. Talk to the people around you in the situation. Talk to someone you trust just to get it out. Maybe that someone is your journal. Maybe it's an actual person. Get it out, talk it out, and then you can approach it in a more healthy way.
Okay, I'm just going to put it out there because the first thing that came to my mind was that when someone has things and they want to go talk to someone, they get concerned about feeling like they're vomiting on someone with their stuff,
Mhm.
or they feel like they make others uncomfortable with their stuff. How can you approach someone to talk to without putting them in their own discomfort, or because you're wanting just to share or maybe get some support, but at the same time, you can see that they're kind of squirming in their seat and you're picking up on that, and then you start shutting down. How is it that you can keep that conversation open without feeling that you are causing more discomfort for yourself or maybe other people?
I always start with a disclaimer. Um, I have a few friends that I do talk to about things quite a bit. So I may start with, okay, I have a rant. Are you ready? And sometimes they say, no, they're not. So then I know I need to go to somebody else. Or I say, look, I need to get something out. I just need to say the words. I don't want your opinion. I don't want it to affect your day. I just need to say the words to get it out of my system. And so give them permission to just sit there and nod their head and tell them, this isn't about you. I don't need you to solve this problem. I just need to talk about it. And I think that allows them to not internalize it and to just, give them permission to let it go in one ear and out the other and just say, look, I need to rant. Can you handle it today?
Yeah.
And like I said, sometimes people have said no, like, nope, I'm not up for it today. And I respect that. And then when I'm done, I'm like, okay, thank you for listening. And sometimes they will have some feedback and say, look, I saw this and I felt this. And you have to be willing to take their feedback. But it's really just about finding that person who will not take it personally, because it isn't about them, it's about you. And so you don't want to affect their mental health, or you don't know how people are going to interpret it, so you want to give them permission to forget it as soon as you say it. Some people aren't capable of that, and we need to accept that, and some people are. So it's about finding that person who has the ability to do that.
I'm glad that you said that, because I know people who are empathic that once they get into hearing your story or whatever you're needing to unload, they absorb that they don't know what is theirs anymore and what is yours.
Right.
So it's really important. That disclaimer is really important in doing that. And the metaphor or visual that I got as you were sharing that was either holding a big boulder in your hands or this heavy backpack that you're about to take off, but you're not passing it to someone else to hang on to. You're actually setting it down. You're taking the weight
Yes.
off yourself.